The heat of reckoning day had a different weight. It wasn't the August sun that baked the skin, it was the September silence that crushed the bone. On the porch of the Cypress Bend Company store, Colonel Elias Vance sat behind his ledger, a book thicker than a Bible and held twice as sacred. Marcus Holloway stood in the packed dirt yard, his hat in his hands, watching. He counted the floorboards of the porch. 12. He counted the buttons on Vance's vest. 6. He counted the heartbeats between Hercules' plea and the first crack of the overseer's strap. 3. But Colonel, sir, the weigh-ins was right this year. I know it, Hercules boomed. He was a man built of oak, capable of pulling a stuck mule from mud, but he was shrinking before the ledger. The book says you owe $5 more than you did last spring, Hercules, Vance said, not looking up. He dipped his pen in the ink. The book says your yield was light. That ain't possible. Fwe picked till our hands bled, ask anyone. Vance finally looked up. His eyes were the color of swamp water, flat and cold. Are you calling my ledger a liar, boy? The silence stretched. Hercules' wife, Sarah, pulled at his arm, but he shook her off. I'm saying there's a mistake. Vance sighed, a theatrical puff of exasperation. Mr. Gideon, he said to the overseer, a man thin as a rail switch and just as cruel. Gideon didn't need to be told twice. The leather strap wasn't a bullwhip, not anymore. This was 1890. This was Florida. This was, by law, a business transaction between a landowner and his free tenants. The strap was for discipline, not punishment. It was a fine distinction lost on the man who fell to his knees as it bit into his back. The sound a wet thwack that scattered the chickens. Hercules didn't cry out. He took it, his massive shoulders bunching. But the cracking sound was secondary. The real violence was in the ink, in the numbers Marcus couldn't see but knew were false. Marcus watched, his face impassive. People thought Marcus was slow, simple. He moved with a deliberation that white men mistook for stupidity and black folk mistook for deep sadness. Both were wrong. Marcus was counting. He was counting the lashes, 7, the number of families watching, 48, and the exact weight of the lie that held them all captive. When Gideon was done, Hercules was breathing in dust. Vance made a small tisk sound. Now about that debt, since you clearly can't manage your accounts and now you've wasted Mr. Gideon's time, I'll be taking your girl, Hannah, up to the main house. She can work off what you owe in the kitchen, effective immediately. That is what broke Hercules, not the strap. A low animal sound rumbled in his chest. He tried to rise, but Gideon's boot on his neck pressed him back into the dirt. Hannah, barely 14, was grabbed by Sarah, but Gideon's son was already there to pull her away. She went silent, her eyes wide with a terror that was older than she was. Marcus Holloway turned and walked away. He didn't look back. The sounds would follow him anyway. He walked past his own small cabin, past the cotton fields that shimmered white in the heat, and deep into the cypress swamp that bordered the property. He didn't stop until the air was thick with Spanish moss and the smell of decay. He knelt by a dark pool of water, unchanged for 1,000 years, and looked at his reflection. He was 32 years old, born in 1858, a free man. It was the most brutal joke God had ever told. He had watched Hercules, a giant broken by a $5 lie. He had seen it. Strength was useless. The fist was useless. The mule was useless. They were fighting a war with plows when the enemy was using arithmetic. Vance's power wasn't in the strap. It was in the ledger. It was in the pencil, the one he kept tucked behind his ear, the one that subtracted their lives, ounce by ounce, bale by bale, year by year. That night, Marcus Holloway did not sleep. He sat on his straw mattress and stared at the dark wall of his cabin. He held a single smooth river stone in his hand. He wasn't thinking about escape. Escape was a fool's dream. Where would they go? The whole state, the whole South was a ledger book just like Vance's. No, you don't run from a prison when the walls are made of numbers. You learn the math. You find the error. You burn the book. The unspoken war began not with a shot, but with a piece of charcoal. For 25 years, Cypress Bend had perfected the art of post-war bondage. Colonel Vance, whose family had owned these very same people before '65, now merely employed them. He provided the seed, the tools, and the cabins. He provided the credit at his company store, where a bag of flour cost 3 times its worth and a pair of boots cost a season's labor. In return, the families worked his land. At the end of the year, Vance weighed the cotton, calculated the expenses, and announced that tragically every single family had just barely failed to clear their debt. They were free to leave, of course, as soon as their accounts were settled. Not a single account had been settled since 1866. Marcus's slowness was his shield. He was the plantation's best mechanic, the one who could fix the cotton gin, reset a wagon wheel, or brace a failing roof. This granted him movement. While others were chained to the rows, Marcus was sent to the gin house, the barns, the main house stables, and the company store to repair the warped porch steps. It was there he saw it. The store's clerk, a nervous young white man named Holloway, had thrown a stack of old filled ledgers into a trash heap to be burned. Marcus, tasked with clearing the pile, paused. He slowly loaded the wagon, and two of the thickest books, 1887 and 1888, found their way under his burlap sack. That night, by the light of a single hoarded candle, Marcus opened the book. He was not illiterate. His mother, a house servant, had taught him letters from a discarded primer. But this was a different language. Columns and columns of figures, names and symbols he didn't understand. Credit, debit, balance FBD. It was a code, and he was determined to crack it. For a month, he worked. He cross-referenced the names with what he knew. He saw Hercules' account. He saw his own. He saw the numbers for seed, for salt pork, for medicine, and then he saw the final tallies. The math was pure poison. It was beautiful in its wickedness. The interest charged was arbitrary, changing from page to page. The weights recorded for cotton were ghosts, fractions of what Marcus knew they had picked. He needed a teacher. He found one in the trash heap behind the main house. Vance, arrogant in his power, was careless. He threw away his newspapers from Pensacola. Marcus smuggled them back to his cabin. He didn't read the news. He read the advertisements. Flour, 20 cents, LB. Denim, 15 cents YD. He compared the newspaper prices to the prices in the 1888 ledger. The flour Vance sold them for 60 cents, the denim for 40. The markup wasn't just profit, it was a wall. But the real discovery came a month later in a crumpled letter Marcus found near the stables. It was from the First National Bank of Pensacola, addressed to the colonel. It was polite, but the language was firm. It spoke of an outstanding note, collateral, and an expected payment on October 1st, 1890. Vance was in debt. Marcus stared at the letter, the candle flame dancing in his eyes. The colonel wasn't a king. He was just a man on a slightly longer chain. He had a master too, the bank, and that master, unlike them, spoke the language of the ledger. Marcus began his own accounting. He didn't have paper. He used the smooth, hard-packed dirt floor under his cot. With a piece of charcoal, he practiced the numbers. He copied the columns. He learned the shape of the words interest and payment. His strategy formed slow and cold as the swamp water. It had three parts. The first part was truth. He found Hercules, a man hollowed out by the loss of his daughter. He found Sarah. He found the matriarch, Auntie Bess, who ran the small cabins with a quiet authority Vance never even saw. He met them in the swamp at New Moon. "He's lying," Marcus whispered, showing them a page from the stolen ledger. "Here, Hercules. He marked you for 10 pounds of seed. You only got 5. I was there. I fixed the wagon." "What does it matter?" Hercules rasped. "It's his word, his book." "We make our own book," Marcus said. He produced a long, knotted piece of hemp rope. "This is Auntie Bess's book," he showed her. "1 knot for every 10 pounds. You braid it. You keep it under your dress. You do it at the weigh-in when he ain't looking." He turned to Hercules. "You, Hercules, you're at the gin. You count the bales. You put a pebble in this pouch for every bale that goes to his barn. A black stone for a full bale. A white stone for a half." They were terrified. This was more than illegal. It was unthinkable. "He's strong with that book," Marcus said, his voice low and urgent. "But he's one man. We are 48. He can't watch all of us. We count. We count every seed, every pound, every bale. We don't say nothing. We just count. We make our own truth." For the rest of 1890, a silent conspiracy spread through Cypress Bend. They developed a language of signs. A hand brushed on the left shoulder meant the overseer was watching. A hymn sung in a certain key meant the weigh-in was light. They became an army of accountants. The second part of the strategy was the fund. Marcus knew counting wasn't enough. They needed capital. "The swamp," he told Hercules. "The cotton at the edges near the swamp. It's always lost, rotted. Hercules understood. From that day, a small, unnoticeable fraction of the cotton harvest never made it to the gin. It was swamp-rotted. It was weevil-eaten. It was rain-spoiled. It was collected in secret, handful by handful, and stored in a dry cave Marcus had found deep in the cypress grove. Once a month, Marcus himself, the trusted, slow mechanic, would take the plantation wagon to town for supplies. He would leave 2 hours before dawn, and on that trip, he would make a second, unsanctioned stop in a different town miles away, where a free black merchant agreed to buy the swamp cotton for cash, no questions asked. Marcus hid the money, coins, not bills, in the hollowed-out axle grease bucket. It was a terrifying risk. It was the only way. The third part was the seed. In July 1890, with the secret fund grown to nearly $60, an impossible sum, Marcus put his seed of doubt in the ground. He had Hercules, who had been taught to write his name by Marcus, painstakingly copy a single sentence onto a piece of wrapping paper. He is cheating you as he cheats us. Check his gin weights against his shipping manifests. Cypress Bend. Marcus paid a freedman traveling north to post it from a different county. The letter was addressed to Mr. Silas Croft, President, First National Bank of Pensacola. The summer of 1890 was brutal. Vance, feeling the pressure from the bank, pushed the hands harder than ever. Gideon's strap was never dry, but something had changed. The fear was still there, but it was no longer hollow. It was sharp. It was focused. When Gideon laid the strap on a young boy for spilling water, the boy's mother didn't scream. She met Auntie Bess's eyes across the field, and a single tight knot was tied in a piece of hidden rope. They were counting. They were waiting. The letter worked. On September 22, 1890, 2 weeks before the final harvest weigh-in, and more importantly 1 week before Vance's October 1st payment was due, a carriage arrived at Cypress Bend. It was not a familiar carriage. A man in a black wool suit stepped out into the crushing humidity. He looked unwell, his face pale and sweating, but his eyes were sharp. He was followed by Colonel Vance, who was attempting a smile that looked more like a grimace. An associate from my bank in Pensacola," Vance announced to Mr. Gideon, loud enough for the field hands to hear. "Just here for a friendly visit, to see the operation." The man in the suit, who introduced himself only as Mr. Croft, did not look friendly, and he was not there to see the operation. He was there to audit it. Marcus, repairing a hinge on the smokehouse door, watched. He had not expected this. Not this soon. His heart hammered against his ribs. It was happening too fast. His plan was for the end of the harvest to present his own numbers after Vance had presented his. Croft, the banker, was a man who only trusted numbers. He ignored Vance's offer of brandy and demanded to see the gin house, the company store, and the ledgers. All of them. For 2 days, Cypress Bend was a hive of quiet tension. Vance was a shadow at Croft's elbow, sweating and smiling. Croft just made notes in a small black book. On the third day, the crisis came. Croft, sitting on the company store porch, the same porch where Hercules was beaten, looked up from Vance's 1890 ledger. "Colonel," Croft said, his voice carrying in the still air, "your ledger shows a projected yield of 200 bales from the North Field, but your ginning records show you've only processed 120, and the harvest is nearly over. A bad season, Mr. Croft. Weather. Insects," Vance stammered. "Indeed," Croft said dryly. "And these expenses at the store. You're charging your tenants 60 cents for a pound of flour that costs 20 in Pensacola. How do you expect them to ever clear their accounts? This isn't a business, Colonel. It's a workhouse, and an inefficient one at that." Vance turned purple. "How I manage my tenants is my affair. The loan is secured by the land." "The loan is secured by the profit from the land, Elias," Croft snapped. "And I am beginning to believe you have been exaggerating that profit for years. The bank does not appreciate being lied to." This was the moment. Marcus felt it. It was now or never. He put down his hammer. He wiped his hands on his trousers. He started walking. He walked past the other hands, who stared at him, terrified. He walked right up the porch steps, tracking dirt on the clean wood. He stood before the two white men. Vance looked at him, utterly dumbfounded. "Marcus, what in God's name do you think you're doing? Get off this porch." "He's right, Colonel," Marcus said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the air. "The yield is light." Croft, the banker, looked intrigued, a tenant farmer who spoke up. "And who are you?" "Marcus Holloway, sir. I fixed the gin." "Get him out of here, Gideon," Vance roared. "Wait," Croft said, holding up a hand. "He fixes the gin. He would know the weights. Why is the yield light, Marcus?" Marcus looked at Vance. He saw the flicker of panic in the colonel's swampy eyes. Then he looked back at Croft. "Because, sir, the men are sick. The tools are broken. The food from the store is thin. We're working as hard as we can, but the land is tired. And the men are too." As if on cue from the north field, the sound of the work song, a steady rhythmic chant that set the pace of the picking, faltered. It slowed. It dragged. It became a funeral dirge. Auntie Bess, working near the road, suddenly sat down, clutching her back. "Oh, Lord," she moaned, loud enough to hear. "My back. It's gone." 2 rows over, another man, strong as Hercules, dropped his bag. "Stomach cramps, Mr. Gideon. Must be that pork from the store." In the space of 5 minutes, the entire harvest of Cypress Bend ground to a halt. It wasn't a strike. They hadn't stopped working. They were just slow, sick, broken. It was the most beautiful, terrible thing Marcus had ever seen. They were enacting his lie, making it truth. "What is this?" Vance yelled, running into the yard. "Gideon, get them up, get them working." Gideon cracked his strap, but it had no effect. The people just moved slower, their faces masks of pained exhaustion. "This is what I'm talking about, Colonel," Marcus said to Croft, who was watching the slowdown with a stunned, calculating expression. "It's an inefficient operation." "You did this," Vance whispered, turning on Marcus. His face was white. "No, sir," Marcus said. "Your ledger did this." He unbuttoned his shirt. Tucked inside was a pouch. He didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a knotted hemp rope and a small leather bag of pebbles. He laid them on the porch railing. "This is Auntie Bess's book, sir. She counts the pickings." He pointed to the knots. "And this is Hercules's book. He counts the bales at the gin." Croft leaned in, his eyes narrowed. "Your book says Hercules's family picked 800 pounds last month," Marcus said, his voice steady. "Auntie Bess's knots say it was 1,200. Your book says the North Field gave 120 bales. Hercules's stones say it was 170. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a greasy, folded piece of paper. It was the letter from the Pensacola Bank. "Your book says you're profitable," Marcus said to Croft, "but your note to the bank is past due. You're lying to them, Colonel, just like you lie to us. The only difference is they can read your book and they can take your land." Vance made a sound, a choked gasp. He lunged at Marcus. He never made it. Hercules, who had materialized at the bottom of the steps, grabbed the colonel's arm. He didn't strike him, he just held him. The grip of a man who could pull a mule from mud. Vance struggled, his face crimson, but he was pinned. "Get your hands off me, you—" "I wouldn't, Colonel," Marcus said. "Mr. Croft is a banker. He doesn't like violence. It's bad for the accounts." Croft stood up. He looked at the chaos. He looked at the stalled field. He looked at the knotted rope. He looked at the struggling colonel, held fast by a man he had whipped and robbed. And then he looked at Marcus. He didn't see a slow mechanic. He saw a man who understood the numbers. "Mr. Holloway," Croft said, ignoring Vance completely. "Show me your math." The war ended in silence. There was no fire, no rebellion. It ended on the porch of the company store with Marcus Holloway, Hercules, and Auntie Bess laying their secret ledgers, their ropes, their pebbles, their memorized lists, next to Vance's fraudulent book. The numbers didn't just disagree, they screamed. Marcus's meticulous records, cross-referenced with the newspaper prices, proved that Vance hadn't just been cheating the tenants. He had been systematically inflating his assets to the bank, reporting phantom profits based on cotton he never grew and labor he never paid for. He was, in the cold language of Mr. Croft, insolvent. Vance was ruined. The bank foreclosed on the loan that very day. By sundown, Colonel Elias Vance was a tenant in his own main house, with Mr. Gideon and his son dismissed. The resolution was not a jubilee. The bank did not free anyone. The First National Bank of Pensacola now owned Cypress Bend, and it too wanted its money. But the bank didn't want to manage a plantation. It wanted to liquidate the asset. Croft, the auditor, was a pragmatist. He saw the 50 families not as tenants, but as a liability. "Their debts," he said to Marcus in the now empty company store. "They are tied to the land. I can't just evict them. And I can't get new tenants if these won't leave. It's a mess." "What is their debt?" Marcus asked. Croft looked at Vance's ledger, the book that had been their prison. According to this garbage, it's over $3,000. It's a lie, Marcus said. I know, Croft said, but it's the lie on the books. It's the legal document. This was the final lock. Vance was gone, but his ghost remained in the ink. I have money, Marcus said. He went to the wagon, dug the grease bucket from the axle and returned. He poured the contents onto the counter. A pile of silver dollars and small coins, $62.40. The Swamp Cotton Fund. Croft looked at the small pile of money, then at Marcus. That's not $3,000. No, Marcus said, but it's cash. And you're a banker. You know the value of cash in hand. He pushed the pile forward. Hercules and Sarah. Their debt is listed at $60. And Hannah, his daughter. We want her back from the main house. Croft was silent. He looked at the small pile of money. It was perhaps the only real money he had seen at Cypress Bend. And there are 4 other families, Marcus continued. Auntie Bess, the Tolver family, the boy who was whipped. Their debts are small. This $62 pays them in full, with $2.40 left over. And the rest? Croft asked. There are 40 families still in the fields. The rest of us, Marcus said, will stay. We'll work the land, we'll pay the bank, but we'll pay honest rates, we'll keep our own books, we'll have a new contract, or we'll walk. All of us. And you'll have this land, but no one to work it, and your note will be worth nothing. It was a bluff, a massive, terrifying bluff. They had nowhere to go, but Croft didn't know that. He just saw a man who had outplayed a colonel. He saw a man who had organized a silent, crippling strike. He saw a man who understood profit and loss. Croft nodded once. Draw up the contract, Mr. Holloway. 5 families paid in full. Hannah is to be returned to her father by nightfall. That night, there was no celebration, but Hercules sat on his cabin step, his daughter, thin and quiet but back, asleep with her head in his lap. He held her hand, and he didn't let go. The next day, 5 families packed their meager belongings. Marcus gave them the remaining $2.40. They walked down the main road past the fields and did not look back. They were the first to ever leave Cypress Bend with their accounts marked paid. Marcus Holloway stayed. He stood on the porch of the company store, which he now ran. He had a new, clean ledger sent by Mr. Croft. He watched the 5 families disappear down the dusty road. He turned, opened the book, and dipped a pen in the ink. He wrote his own name at the top of the first page. The war wasn't over. It would never be over. The bank was a master, same as the colonel, just one with a colder eye and a longer reach. But the walls of the prison had been seen. The math had been learned. And for the first time, Marcus Holloway held the pencil.